I'm Aryeh Schwartz, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. Many teams in the W this season have been going through big changes. Of those teams, only one has a former MVP. This episode, I'm joined by Imanni Wright, a big part of the Winsidr team and boots on the ground in LA, covering the LA Sparks to discuss everything Sparks. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. That's patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. We're also blowing up on Twitter, so you should definitely check us out. But if you're looking for a fun way to enjoy the W, join our playbacks. Our W watch parties. Use the link playback.tv/Winsidr, playback.tv/Winsidr. Welcome to the Winsidr Show. I'm excited. I'm joined this episode by Imanni Wright to discuss all things Sparks. You might know Imanni for her famous purple cup, or maybe her hot takes. Either way, you know she's got some basketball knowledge, and you know she's ready to talk all things LA Sparks. How you doing, and what are you up to on this fine day?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Honestly, it's been a great day, start to my day so far. It's nice and warm here in SoCal. It's a nice and toasty, like 85 degrees. So I am living my best life.
My grandmother's just melting in Palm Springs these days. Every day I get a call from her. It's like, yeah, it's almost 120. I can't go outside. I'm like, yeah, don't go outside. Well, I'm glad it's a little cooler for you. So, all right, let's set the tone. We know this has not been the greatest of LA Sparks seasons, and I don't think many thought it would be going into the season. Maybe had higher expectations than they're living up to it now. We're on an 8-game losing streak. It's the largest losing streak in LA Sparks history. LA Sparks have been around for a long time, so that's you know. But I'm curious for you. Yes, we're a couple games past halfway point in this season, but I think this is a good point to kind of just look at the season as half the pie. What are your thoughts? What comes to mind when you think of the first half of the season for the LA Sparks?
So for me personally, the Sparks have been underwhelming to say the least. Honestly, I figured there would be a little bit of time in terms of adjustments. You have a new head coach, you have a couple of new pieces with Erica Hamby and Azare Stevens. But I'm only underwhelmed because of the amount of injuries that have happened. I mean, Kurt Miller talked about this, who's the head coach of the Sparks. In his 19 years of coaching, he has never seen anything like that before. So for me, I'm also saying I have never in my life ever seen anything like that before in terms of injuries. And honestly, I feel like I've said this before, they're doing the best with what they got, but when they are healthy, they're a really elite team. And honestly, I'm really excited to see what the second half of the season looks like. I mean, they just recently dropped a close game to the Lynx. But it seems like the Lynx, like some people say, just have their number almost. It just seems like they can't really like get over the hump with them. But I'm excited to see what they do against Indiana soon as a newer matchup that they have coming up. So I'm excited to see what they do against them. And also, honestly, for the rest of the season. But honestly, the first half of the season is they did the best of what they had. Everybody stepped up as much as they could and played to the best of their ability, even with inserting people who are on hardship contracts like Ray Burrell and Destiny Henderson. So honestly, I think Coach Miller is working with what he has, and honestly, I think the positivity has helped this team in the long run in terms of keeping morale up as much as they can.
And I think that's a huge, huge aspect for this because look, if we're gonna look at this season as a whole, when I think about it, I like I said from the beginning, like you're not looking at this team like, oh, they're gonna compete for a championship. You're looking at this team with some question marks in the sense of, I think knowing Kurt Miller is an elite coach in this league, he has success. He's proven that. I mean, in I'll throw this out there, like in the Winsidr chat, we constantly like refer to him as an elite floor raiser. He takes teams and he makes them better than some other coaches would. And he's really, really good at that. So looking at this season, I think the high expectations, if it were in quotations, was that like they would exceed expectations. Now, obviously, it's hard to do that when you're dealing with like. Let's just run down some stats here. Their number 2 scoring leader in points per game is Lexi Brown, who hasn't played in like almost 2 months, right? And then you go all the way down until you get Hamby and Aryeh Stevens. And Aryeh was injured for a really long time. Shanae's been injured a bunch. I mean, it's just you have Destiny Henderson as like a top 12 scorer on this team, and that's a hardship signing who like wasn't there for that long. Like that's kind of ridiculous to your point. So I think like looking at this team, the one thing I'll push back, I think the vibes have been great. I think the 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 big thing for me, I guess, is those giant leads that they lost. Like those are just backbreaking, and those are the games. I don't think about the 8-game losing streak. I don't think about the wins. I think about those 19, 20 point losses that they blew. And I think I brought this up on the playback with you, where it's like in my mind, maybe I'm far removed. I'm on the complete other side of the country. So maybe I'm sniffing the glue. I'm way off. I'm reading into something that's not there. I just feel like how much, well, obviously, but like how much better would the vibes be if you don't blow 2, 3 19-point leads? And kind of in my mind, that derails the season, not in like a, sell the barn type situation, but just in the sense of what you were talking about, what I've been talking about. Like the goal for this team is to make strides forward, to rebuild what Derek Fisher broke down. And I wonder, I mean, I'll say it, come on. Like they had, like, can we talk? We don't need to talk about this, but like they had Chelsea Gray and Candace Parker, Nneka Ogwumike. Look what Chelsea Gray and Candace Parker are doing right now. Also, Chelsea Gray is like in her prime right now. She is a freaking whatever. We're not going to talk about that right now. My point is, how much do you think those blown leads kind of seep into the overall feel, the overall makeup of this season? Or am I just kind of, making mountains out of molehills?
I think honestly, in terms of them losing leads, I think it's again like a chemistry thing and a feel thing. It's a newer team; they're trying to get a feel for each other, stuff like that. But also too, I think it's a leadership thing. So honestly, like it seems like a lot of the times the team gets frazzled, and I've noticed that I don't really notice anybody reeling them back in when it gets to a certain point. I mean, I think Coach Miller tries his best, but like I don't see and the main leader I think on the team is Laisha Clarendon, and they've been out. So I think that's also might have contributed to that as well. And I think I mean, they're trying their best, but at the same time, you're right. Like they can't lose leads like that. Like that's not good basketball. And I think what would alleviate that is somebody stepping up and saying like, "Hey guys, let's just take a deep breath. Like let's meet at the free throw line. Hey, let's take a deep breath. Let's chill out. Like we got this. Like." And just kind of doing that, I think would help a lot in terms of them kind of securing leads in the future.
And honestly, a really interesting aspect of that, because when you say there's, you know, some leadership questions, I don't think it's a negative thing to say this, because you look at Nneka's career, who she's been surrounded by, the teams she's been on. I think that's been a really interesting aspect to this, for lack of a better term, new wave LA Sparks since Candace Parker and Chelsea Gray left. Is this went from being a team of a championship caliber team with vets who know how to win, who have done it before, to now, you know, a lot of journey people, a lot of, yes, they're vets. And some of them, looking at you, Lexi Brown, has won a championship, looking at you, Jordan Canada. So they have those aspects, but none of these players were in key leadership roles on those championship teams. And that's not a knock against Nneka, because you had Candace Parker on the team. You had, Elena Beard. Like, so I think it's been a really, really interesting aspect. While we've seen Nneka have some of the greatest stats of her career, the growth we've seen from her, she's dropping basically a 2010 double double average per game right now. And that's not even including 3 assists per game. Like, Nneka is doing insane things. And the thing that keeps popping out to me is just like every year I keep going, okay, like Nneka's gonna plateau. You know what I mean? And every year she keeps climbing the ranks, keeps doing a little bit something different. Um, I just sidetrack. I just want you to talk about Nneka for a second because I'm just she's not getting enough talk. I know that of recent there's been, the Nafisa in the MVP discussion, which I disagree with only because of where they're positioned in the playoff hunt. Earlier in the season, there was some of that similar talk with Nneka. Talk to me about what Nneka's done this season because to me it's just mind-blowingly good.
Yeah, honestly, Kurt talks about this a lot that like she's putting up numbers better than her MVP season, which I feel like speaks volumes. Seeing her play in person, I think, is one of the most valuable experiences I've had being able to cover the Sparks. She's just so crafty, and also too, she plays the game at her own pace now because she's been in the league for so long. She just plays the game at her own pace, but also her decision making is great, her passing is great, and honestly, too, I think she's trying her best to insert herself as a leader on the team, but also too, like she can't do everything. She can't be
Hmm.
like the main scorer, the leader, everything else. That's kind of what like your point guard is supposed to do in a basketball sense.
Hmm.
Your point guard is supposed to be your leader, kind of your general, your right hand woman in a sense. So I think Nneka is again doing the best that she can, and I think she's having a phenomenal season.
Ridiculous. Oh, wait, I have to ask this because I saw this on social. Uh, the worldwide sports leader, ESPN. I think it was ESPN. That's what their catchphrase is. I gotta say it. Um, they had a tweet, a GIF. I don't know what you call it. That was Nneka and Angel Reese side by side. Um, Side note: I never realized how much some of the jerseys look alike. But they were saying Angel Reese is like the comparison, the best comparison for her to a WNBA player. Now, first of all, let me say, effing love that they're doing it that way because 4 years ago they would have been like, "What player is Angel Reese like?" and they would have listed like 5 NBA players. So happy we've grown to the point where they're actually referencing W players. I'm curious for you as somebody who is a smarter basketball mind than I. Personally, I don't see the comparison in the sense of style of play. I think, yes, Nneka can get downhill, but I view Angel Reese getting downhill a lot more. I also I'm a big fan of Angel Reese's swag and just her demeanor and everything about her. I also, more than others, have some questions of her style of play, only because I think she's getting a lot of, for lack of a better term, I apologize if this offends anybody, garbage stats in the sense of blown easy layups that she just happens to be standing there getting an easy putback. She misses a couple easy put-ins and she gets her own I just think that when she's going up against more physically mature players, some of those stats are going to come down a lot and her footwork's going to need to change. I don't know why I'm ranting so much. Nneka, Angel Reese, do you see the comparison? Do you have a different player in mind?
Honestly, I don't see the comparison only because Nneka has really developed her outside shot a lot, and I don't think Angel Reese has that yet. I'm sure
Mm,
she's working on it and building it. But Nneka from mid range, insane. So I think with that, I don't see the comparison. In terms of a comparison for Angel Reese to a WNBA player, I think that she gives like I feel like if she keeps developing and keeps working on her outside shot and in the post, I feel like she's giving me like Dewana Bonner or Dewana Bonner with like a hybrid of like Candace Parker vibes. I feel like is what
interesting.
I'm getting from her. In terms of
Honestly,
the agility and speed, post, all that stuff, I think once she develops, I feel like she could be that type of player.
I don't know why, but hearing you talk about the comparison, a player that popped in my mind, Natasha Howard.
Mm-hmm.
and now I really want to like look at it more, think about it more, blah blah blah. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna go with that until I can think more. Okay, so what am I missing with this LA Sparks team? Is it like we've talked about the injuries? Like, we could go down this list, and I feel like literally everybody's been injured. I mean, what is Neka the only player who hasn't missed a game?
No, Neka was out for
Oh yeah.
one game, I think, in the begin towards the beginning of the season, and I can't remember what it was for, but I know she was out for one game.
Okay. Well, okay. All right. Never mind. Zaya Cook uh, is the only person, or maybe Hamby also. No, Hamby's been in every game also. So all right, cool. We got at least they got two players who have been healthy enough to play the whole season. What do you think, like play wise, when you look at it? Like, what's the strength and what's the weakness of this team?
I think the strength is the defensive intensity of this team. I think defensively, you have elite defenders like Jordan Canada and Neka as well. Even Zaya Cook is an elite defender, and I think that and De'Aaron Hamby as well. So you have great defense, but I think the weakness is that that great defense doesn't always translate to great offense. The team has this issue of going on extremely long scoring droughts and letting teams go on runs, which is why I think teams get away from them so quickly. It usually happens either in the first quarter, um, second quarter, and every once in a while in the third, but most of the time it's in the first or the second quarter. We saw this in the Minnesota game they recently had that they lost by 3. Minnesota went on an 18-2 run in the second quarter. That cannot happen if you want to win games. So I think that's another thing. And also too, I think the team sometimes has these long lapses of not communicating, which is I feel like one of the simplest things to do in basketball is to communicate. And also too, they have this issue of where like they don't move without the ball consistently enough. If you watch a team like Vegas, if you watch a team like New York, they're constantly moving. Somebody's constantly moving, setting screens, running through the whole play, looking at as many options as they can. And I feel like with LA, like that doesn't happen all the time. And I feel like that's why they don't score as much as they can, is because they do have those lapses or they try to go ISO and that doesn't always work. You can only ISO so much. And I think that's kind of the Achilles heel of this team is that they just don't do the simple little things like communicate and have scoring droughts. And also, too, they don't move enough on offense.
And I would say, like, first of all, it's funny because when you're like communication, one of the simplest things in basketball, I was gonna say for me, it's movement. Like some people don't like to talk. Everyone can run. Everyone got movement in them, right? That's why you're on the team. We see that with DC too, a team that I think fair to say is much more talented roster wise than this LA Sparks team. That's another Achilles heel of other teams. But just like you said with New York and Vegas, the good teams are moving and communicating and working off each other. Um, because I love to play devil's advocate, I'll give a little bit of defense. I'll give a little bit of an excuse for the LA Sparks, and that is that Lexi Brown has played just 11 games. And when you don't have, I mean, yes, I know Carly, like, what am I trying to say here? Was snubbed by the league when it came to the 3-point contest. I know she's an elite 3-point shooter. But you look down this list, right? Like Neka, Lexi, Jordan, Hamby, Stevens, Shanae, Lay, Carly, Destiny, Zaya. Like, I'm really reading down that list, and like, yeah, you got Carly, but for the most part, I'm looking at Lexi as an established 3-point shooter in this league, and that's not shade or anything to Carly. That's just saying like Lexi's won rings, Lexi's been on multiple teams, and honestly, we should do a whole episode just on Lexi's career because what she's been able to do and solidify herself in this league has been amazing. But to miss a 3-point shooter and also early on in her career, she was an elite defender and elite 3-point shooter, but not both at the same time. As her career has progressed, the most impressive thing to me is early in her career, you'd see exhaustion on offense and she wasn't getting her legs under her shot because she was putting so much effort in defense and vice versa. Now we're seeing a complete player in Lexi Brown. And I think for me, when you have that player who makes those big emotion threes, when you have a player who maybe like the ball gets stagnant, but then you finally move it on one offensive set and she hits that shot, it kind of like creates a pattern that you keep doing it, and positive things lead to more positive things and negative things lead to more negative things. So for me, it's like, yes, I blame the roster build that we're so reliant on Lexi Brown. Um, but that injury in my mind is taking a huge important aspect of the flow of this team that just really, really hurts it. Um, what's cooking with Cook? Like, talk to me about her rookie season. I've been impressed. She's kind of come in here and, well, she hasn't necessarily been in MVP discussion, or sorry, rookie of the year discussion. Um, I think she's one of those players who has come in like a vet. Um, and I'm curious your thoughts on her.
Yeah, honestly, I'm excited. I feel like Zaya is going to be one of those mainstays in the league for a long time. Just I think what sticks out to me the most about Zaya is just her fearlessness. Like she literally is like, "Yo, I'm Zaya Cook. I'm gonna play ball. I'm gonna do me, and I'm gonna get my buckets when I can." And I think Zaya's doing a good job of being a sponge. She always talks about, like, even in some of the post game pressers, how Jordan kind of speaks positivity into her, and how a lot of the players speak positivity into her. And I think that's been super helpful for her in terms of staying with that mindset. And honestly, too, I think she's a great player. I would love to see a little more minutes from her, like there was at the towards the beginning of the season. She was kind of more in the rotation, and they were winning games when she was in the rotation a little bit more. So I think that's been a good thing about Zaya. I think the only thing that Zaya I feel like needs to work on is just letting the scoring come to her and trying not to force things. Um, and I think that's just something that takes time. She's on a whole new team, like with a whole new players, whole new system, whole new coach. Like you got to give the rook the benefit of the doubt in those moments, because she's learning, but she learns things. She picks up things very quickly. So, but again, I'm excited to see what she looks like for the rest of the season, and I would love to see more minutes from her because I think when she is on the floor, she adds a lot of. It's positive when she's on the floor. So
It's also crazy because I look at that backcourt of Lexi, Canada, Lay, and Cook, and it's just like, damn, those are really good players that I always talk about, like the sliders, right? Like one player's gonna be really good at this and not so good at that. I just feel like all those players are super good at different things, and
mhm.
you like if you can mold them into one person, that'd be really cool. I want to talk about an interesting aspect for me because the two biggest moves I think you could say for the LA Sparks this offseason were adding De'Arica Hamby and Aryeh Stevens. And pairing them with NECA, I'm curious of the vision. I think, and we talked about this on playback a little bit. We hinted at it. We told the people we were going to do this. But like, I just think about it and I'm like, okay, NECA is an elite big. She's slightly undersized, so I get, and she's super athletic, so I get the idea of wanting to run it a little bit more. Hamby is an elite big who's, not going to tear it up from three, but like I trust her with, like, her neck I trust with most anything. And then you got Stevens, who again, she's on the rise up. I remember when she was drafted, and I mean, I'll say this is hilarious because I remember being on the podcast when she was drafted, and me and Eli Horowitz, Eli, who's now the assistant GM of the LA Sparks, back then he was my podcast co-host. We were talking about Aryeh and how, like, both of us, we have this vision for her. We started the hashtag Aryeh hype train, and like now it's hilarious because he brought her onto their team. But I sit here and I go, how do these three players work together on the court? And I think sometimes it can work depending on who your opponent is, right? Like you need that extra size. The game's going to be slowed down a little bit. I just personally, I think the biggest issue with that big three lineup is I don't know if Stevens has the speed to play the three. I see her, just as a slightly slower Candace Parker. And I know people push back like, oh, like I'm not saying like, I'm talking about style of play, gameplay and stuff like that. I'm curious for you, like, is it ideal for them both to be on the court? is it going to stagger it? I was going to jokingly call this the Hamby conundrum, but then you shamed me for it. No, because like
She's been
sometimes,
through enough. She's been through enough,
right?
Aryeh. No shame.
No, but like not even towards her. Just like sometimes your best players, or sometimes you have, a handful of really good players, and they can't all be on the court at the same exact time, and you stagger them and play them differently and things like that. I'm just curious, like, do you think it's best they need more time? I realize that like Hamby's coming back from giving birth. It is insane that what she is doing right now. Like I can't give enough props. I don't know the words to give enough props. I'm tipping my cap. That's not enough. I'm tipping whatever. Steven's coming back from an injury. Like, talk to just yeah, go on a rant.
So for me, I don't think it works. And I'm being completely honest right now. When Azure is playing the floor, she is so efficient. She's like in her zone. And she even said this in a presser that the floor is her natural position. And that is a position where she thrives. And so I think from a coaching standpoint, I feel like you're doing her a disservice by putting her at the three because you know that's not her natural position and you know that she's not going to succeed. And if you're a coach and you want to see your players succeed and your team succeed, I think you should play them where they are naturally comfortable. And so for me, I don't think it works. Neka and Diarca have a very special connection from the high post to the low post. I talked about this. Actually, I asked them about this in a presser, and they were saying that like they've just been able to build that type of chemistry. And I just feel like even with Neka and Azare and Diarca and Azare, I think that works. But I think having all three of them in at the same time, first of all, it clogs the lane. Second of all, Azare she can shoot the three. Diarca can also shoot the three, but I feel like they're not established enough and they haven't built that skill set enough to kind of almost be a threat in a way. So I think that it doesn't work. And I've noticed that there has been more success when one or the other is on the floor. And usually, Nekas usually stays on the floor and they usually switch out Hamby and Stevens. And I think when they go like that, they've seen success. I mean, I saw that a lot in the Lynx game. Like, a lot of times they weren't on the floor all three of them weren't on the floor at the same time. But you could probably get away with that with a team like Minnesota. But again, you just have to
I love that you said it. No, you're real. It's right.
um,
It's true.
so you just have to just figure out what combination works and who comes off the bench. And I mean, like obviously, like they're all gonna get their touches at the end of the day. Like they're all gonna play. And I think it's one of those things where hopefully, like no egos are bruised by the fact that one is coming off the bench over the other. But I just don't think that's a good fit.
I keep thinking back, and maybe this is lazy analysis by me, but like I keep thinking back to Kurt's recent years in Connecticut, where he was playing when he could Bree Jones, Jonquel Jones, and Alyssa Thomas. But like you're playing all three of them, right? Just ideally in a normal world would fit into that 4 or 5 position lock, right? And you're just kind of like, okay, you know what? For a while we had Bree Jones coming off the bench, but then let's throw it all like let's just put all of our best players out there. I don't care if it clogs the lane. We'll slow it down defensively. We'll just make them work, blah blah blah. And it worked when you have, those players, but I don't think it necessarily works here to your point. And obviously, hopefully no one's feelings are hurt, but there is a history with Hamby being forced to sit on the bench. So maybe just make Stevens do that a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
But
I'm,
also
I'm
too, just to add, like
yeah.
Kurt also is like a big advocate of positionless basketball. And I think that's where that kind of mindset comes in at putting Azuri at the three, is because like to him, he feels like the new age of the W is positionless.
Hmm.
So just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that and love that. So I'm curious for you, besides getting healthy, what do you feel like? Because look, I'm not saying this team should tank. Far from it. I'm never going to tell a team like you should tank. I will say that maybe in a 3-year plan, it's more beneficial for you not to make the playoffs this year. Um, I'm curious for you with this team, like second half of the season is here. What do they need to do in your mind to have a quote unquote successful season? Are they already there and they just need to, continue playing? Do they need to get a win mark? Do they need to make the playoffs? Do they not? Like, what is growth, I guess, for you?
I think with them it's just honestly taking it game by game and closing out games. I noticed that with the Lynx that they had a very hard time closing out the game. Um, and I did have some questioning of the play at the end of the Lynx game in terms of who took the last shot. Because from a coaching standpoint, I understand what he was trying to do. He was trying to give the ball to the best player, but at the same time, like you have Lexi and Carly on the floor. So I was just confused why they didn't take the 3-point shot. But
Hmm.
hey, I'm not Kurt Miller. So for me, I think it's just taking it game by game, step by step, and just honestly, the main goal for them, I think, for the rest of the season is to stay healthy. Like that, just to keep it simple, like stay healthy and just try to win as many games as they can. And honestly, I'm the type of person where if the coach is there in their first year, like I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. Like it's your first year, new pieces, new season, new lot, a lot of new, and like we give teams that benefit of the doubt usually in the college world, but I think it should be the same in the professional world as well. Like yes, they're professionals, but at the same time, I think you have to also know your personnel and also to like it's a big adjustment period and sometimes it takes people longer to adjust than others, and I feel like that shouldn't be like frowned upon in a way, especially given Kurt's championship lineage. I think again we should just be patient, and I think honestly next year I'm looking forward, like obviously I'm looking forward to the rest of the season, but I think next year will be really interesting because we'll have Katie Lou Samuelson back and we'll have Stephanie Talbot. So I think that kind of changes people's, I think next year will change a lot of people's perception given the additional pieces we will have going into next season.
Yeah, and that I mean, that 3-point shooting just by adding those two players. And it's a crazy thing because I remember a few years back there was, I forget who it was, someone passed me an individual study that they did about like when you replace a coach with an established coach who has been a coach before, um versus someone who hasn't been a head coach before. In the first 2 years, the coach who hasn't been a head coach before statistically does better than the coach who's already been a head coach before. But in the 3 to 6 year range, often that's when the established coaches do better. So I think to your point, give a little leeway. Kurt's an established coach. He's somebody who has proven he knows how to do things right. Hasn't got a championship yet. Hopefully, he can bring LA their fourth. Um, what do you think the needs are this offseason before getting players back from the IR, from the suspension list? I hate saying the suspension list because it sounds like they were punished. But I guess like if forget about like they need to sign this specific player, like talking generalizations. Do they need another superstar? Do they need, you know, depth in a certain position? Like what do you think the big missing pieces?
I think honestly they need a shooting guard. I mean, that was something I kind of said when I was doing like the mock draft that we did. I actually drafted a shooting guard for them. And I think there is a little bit of lack of depth at the shooting guard position. And I think that's something that they need. And there's plenty of free agents this year that'll be available that are established shooting guards and that can do well and fit into the system with the LA Sparks. So I think that's kind of what they need, because you can't solely rely. This year, I've seen it a lot where they've solely relied on two players, and I just think you need that third player to bring scoring and to bring another threat. Not saying that nobody else is a threat, but like it's just like you just need, it can't be Nneka and De'Erica every night, or Nneka and somebody else, and Nneka and somebody else, because it's usually like two players that are thriving per game, and you just need that like one, just need that one more, you just need that one player, and
Just looking at you, Julenka.
I already said it on Twitter that about Ka. Everybody was throwing tomatoes at me, but I was like, I'm just saying. Anyways, but
I think the fit would be fun. Like,
yeah,
say what you
because LA
want, the
is
fit would be fun.
because LA gets up and down the floor, and I think Ka would fit really well with that offense. And she can play defense. So, yeah. But anyways, that's the TA. But yeah, so I think a shooting guard would be great. And honestly, too, I feel like they have plenty of bigs. I don't think they need to sign any more bigs. They have De'Erica, they have Aryeh, they have Nneka, and everything. So and Chene. So I think they have plenty of depth at those positions. I think also too, if you have more depth at the two, it gives Jordan Canada more opportunity to kind of facilitate and not have to worry about trying to balance. Okay, when do I score? When do I facilitate? So
Hey,
that's
I'm with
my
you.
take.
Any final thoughts before we do pick them?
No, honestly, Sparks, I'm rooting for you that you just stay healthy. And if we need to, I will come to the arena and burn sage because
Clean it out.
it's crazy out here. So yeah.
Okay, so for pick 'em, I'll let you go first. I don't want my picks to influence your picks. Uh, we got a full slate of 5 games happening tomorrow, Tuesday. Um, but I'm just gonna pick in my mind the two. Obviously, we'll pick the Sparks game, Fever at Sparks, and then a game I got circled because if you don't know, now you know. I got $10 on the Dallas Wings to win the finals because that's $1,000 payout when I put it down, and why not? So I think they're the dark horse team. I'm keeping my eye close to them. Um, Shout out to whoever told me about that number. And then we got Sun at Wings, two of the top 5 teams competing in that one. Fever at Sparks. Who you got?
I have the Sparks. Not gonna lie. Not any that's removing any bias. I just think that I think that the Sparks will be able to contain Kelsey. And also too, I think Aaliyah as well. I think they'll be able to do a pretty good job on her. And honestly, Nalissa Smith still out?
Yes, I believe she'll be out for this one more game,
Okay,
at
so I
least.
mean that also takes out another scoring option.
From
But
my
I think
understanding, she's with the team, but I believe she will not be participating in this game.
okay. So yeah, I think they'll win. If they do what they're supposed to do, they'll win.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I have for that game.
I'm actually going to agree with you on that one. I think having the strength of, Aaliyah Boston being such a strength for the Fever and going up against a vet. Um, Look, Aaliyah Boston's having a Rookie of the Year campaign. There's no question about that. Leading candidate. It's already probably on the bag. Like she could sit out for half the rest of the season, and it's pretty much set. But there have been times where she's struggled with foul trouble, and there has been times where she's struggled against some of the more elite bigs in this league. I'm looking for Nneka to kind of be like, I'm an MVP. I'm the president of the Players Association. Let me school you, Rook. And Lexi Brown to go off a little bit because it's going to be a fun one like that. Sun at Wings. I think we already know who I'm hoping, or at least what I'm going at. I think realistically, it could go either way. It really depends which Wings team we get, and which Suns team we get. But I'm gonna, out of hope, go for the Wings. What about you?
I think I'm gonna go for the Sun.
You just don't
The
want to agree with me.
Wings. No, not even to be contrary. Like again, like you said, I don't have a lot of faith in the Wings' consistency right now,
Hmm.
especially like Aryeh has been showing promise in terms of buying into the system and playing within the system. But sometimes I notice when they're against more elite teams, she starts to kind of go off the rails a little bit. So I think that I'm gonna have to go with the Sun.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, and that's a really good point. As I like to end every episode, Monty, who's your goat? And you better pick a women's basketball player.
My goat is no, I'm just kidding.
I trash him the episode. We're done. Get out of here.
No, my goat is Swin Cash, former Detroit Shock,
Ooh,
champion. I love like Swin. That's my girl. Like I literally love Swin. She was one of the people that I saw growing up when I did go to a lot of the Detroit Shock games. So Swin's my goat. I love her fierceness, just her style of play. I will not say I did not model my game after her, but I will say that like the influence is there. It's there, but not fully.
little,
I didn't fully model my game after her, but
you're a little too short to model your game after her. I feel like.
exactly. So A girl can dream. But yeah, so Swin Cash is my goat though.
Love it. Have not. I love when people bring up a player who isn't commonly referenced, isn't always on the topic. And remind people, what's your Instagram handle, where they can read your work.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Imanni Wright, so which is my first and last name. So I probably should spell it out. So at IMANNIWRIGHT on Twitter, and then on Instagram it's Imanni Wright. So it's IMANNIWRITES because I'm a writer. Imanni Wright. So yeah.
Ah, she got a little clever with that one. All right. Have a good one.